Hello, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to our series of webinars. We have moved away from our Art of Storytelling series, but you can catch up on all of those on our website as part of our on-demand resources. And we're moving into a slightly different format of webinars going forward. Obviously, always with a focus on new customer acquisition, as always, but these will be slightly more conversational and slightly less formatted. So we'd really like your opinion on whether or not you enjoy these sessions, or whether you found the previous webinars that we've done a little bit more useful and valuable. So let us know, leave anything in the comments if you've got any questions, as always. And I'm joined once again by Andy, our director at Revenue Growth Agency. Today, we're going to be covering the role of video within luxury e-commerce. It's one of my favorite topics. I know Andy's got some strong opinions on the use of video as well. So we're tight on time, as we always are. So we're going to get straight in. So my favorite topic to talk about, and something that I talk about quite a lot, is attention and how to captivate and keep the user's attention. There's been a lot of hearsay back and forth, not only in the marketing industry, but just in general, that consumers' attention spans are shortening and are becoming shorter and shorter as every day passes. I don't actually think that's the case. I don't think our attention spans are getting shorter. I think we are blessed with so much content, and we're so used to consuming content that we've just become better at deciding what we do and don't like. So our decision-making skills have become a lot quicker. We can decide within the first 5 seconds whether or not we're going to find a video valuable or a piece of content valuable. So it's not that it can't keep our attention, it's just that we know what we like and we don't. So as a brand, how do we combat that? How do we make sure that we are constantly providing and generating content that's able to captivate attention and keep attention and get brands to really pull at people's heartstrings or get an audience engaged? Andy, what do you think is the most important thing when we're looking at captivating attention for users across social or across digital in general?
It's an interesting one. I'm going to start with a bold statement, so hold on to your seats. I think as marketeers, I think sometimes we are fixated with selling a product. And I think in order to acquire new customers, we have to move away from that thing. We've got to sell our product, we've got to get our product in front of people. And instead we should think about the process of providing as much information about our brand's why to allow customers to make their own decision. So it's not push, it's more pull to a certain degree. And the best way to pull an audience in, once you've identified who they are, I think, and therefore capture their attention and engage them, is understanding that there are a number of tools that are better at doing that than probably what most luxury brands particularly are focusing on, one of which is video. I know we're talking quite a lot about video at the minute in our agency and to our clients, but video is a really good way, if it's put together very simply, and it can be fairly inexpensive to do as well, is a really good way just to say, this is why we exist. And once you start to connect with people on a this is why we exist level, you can then start to feed them the information about where the product comes from, why the brand exists, what materials are used, are they sustainable? If they are, why? Where's everything made? And that is a way to get, particularly a new brand or an existing brand that's looking to get in front of a new audience, that's a really good way of sort of thinking about it, is use video to do it, but think differently. Don't try and sell products at the very start. Try and think a bit more about what information can I provide to my ideal buyer, and let them make their own mind up. They will decide whether or not they're going to follow you. And if you do your job as a marketeer and a storyteller, which is ultimately what we are, then you should they should want to follow. You should be able to captivate them just by following that different change in your psychology.
I think as well with video, you have an advantage in the fact that there is an auditory element to video that you don't get with static images. So, captivating attention doesn't necessarily mean that, you need to have like a big explosion at the beginning of your video and things like that, but you can hook people in through music or through sound if you need to. If you find that you can't find that hook visually, then maybe you can do it through audio, and that's just an advantage that you can't really get with any other medium apart from video. And it can, there's so many trending sounds and trending pieces of music that come about because of TikTok or social media in general. And not to say that every brand needs to jump on all of those trends, because it can become quite ingenuine, but take a look at how music or sound or dialogue can play into your video, because I think the two together can really generate emotion, and we see it in ads all the time where the music really makes a difference. So have a think about that and make sure the music mirrors your identity as a brand. So for instance, we have a client who has some like really fun, slightly retro products, and they use a lot of kind of French music, and it just mirrors their identity really well. They wouldn't use like a pop song or like a trending TikTok audio because it just wouldn't fit. So have a think about that and try and use music or audio to your advantage.
It's a good point about audio, because if you think about it, years ago, radio was one of the most widely used traditional marketing channels, wasn't it? And radios were anchored on jingles, which is an psychological audio reference for people to buy. And I think sometimes as brands, we think, what's the next big thing? And we're looking at AI at the minute, and we're going to do some content on that coming up. So stay tuned for that, not in this webinar, but in future ones. And also TikTok is a big sort of talking channel at the minute. We've got to go and do some TikTok. Let's do some TikTok. But a lot of the things that work well in likes of TikTok are rooted in what has worked for 20, 30, 40 years in traditional media. So sound, one of the key things that we can target or that we include in some of the ads is sound in TikTok. What's trending at the minute in terms of audio? So there's lots and lots of parallels there. Yeah, so audio's is a good one. I think engagement is another interesting one. And again, where we see brands fall down is that they will understand that they need to do some kind of awareness activity, and there's a nice link there between awareness and doing a video. So they put together some video content that they think is great, and then they send it out to the world, and then they sit back. And then they either look at ROAS and think, oh, it's poor, or they look at the impact of the wider brand and realize, oh, it's not really made that much difference. The problem is, and this is where we've had so much success, is there's got to be a connection between the awareness piece of creative or strategy and the sale elements of strategy. There's a huge void in the middle, which we call storytelling, but it's the idea of send something to somebody that tells them your why you exist, what the brand's about, a little bit about brand story. But then you've got to further it up, follow it up with a sequence of messages that just further the conversation. If you have a conversation with someone in a bar, you don't walk up to them and say, hi, and then walk away. You'd say, hi, how you doing? How's the day been? Did you watch the football? Did you go to the cinema? Did you do the theatre? So you've got to continue this conversation until you get to a point where you feel you know them well enough. And then you can ask for a sale. Well, then you can say, here's the latest product, or, there's an offer for your first order here. But particularly with new audiences we're talking about here, not existing audience, this is pretty much focused on new audiences. That's really the only way to do that. So if you're going to try and captivate and gain attention of a new audience, you've got to think about the engagement bit as well.
Cool. So if we move on to our next topic, which is about building brand and building trust and why video is so important in doing that. And I think we've already touched on a couple of things in terms of having a visual identity and using video to cement that can be really important for building brands. I am going to quote Burnett and Field, as I do probably every couple of weeks, and say that long-term brand building is the most sustainable way for you to be able to grow your brand over constantly serving sales messages. They've done a ton of research on it. I am slightly biased as a brand marketer, but it's the way of the world. You can't just be continually pushing sales messages, because then your brand will be synonymous with sales and it will have no real identity of its own. So video being a way that you can connect with an audience, and the way that we connect with an audience is through stories and is through emotion, and visually, like doing something visual is the easiest way to be able to connect with an audience. I think if you're trying to build a brand and you're trying to build awareness or reputation or trust, using video is probably one of the easiest and the quickest ways that you're going to be able to do that, because it can convey so much in such a short space of time. And I think building trust is a really interesting topic, because it used to be that your product, people would have to buy your product, and then kind of just the trust had to kind of be there in principle. Whereas now, with the rise of user-generated content and the fact that social proofing is such an important part of the user journey, and it's such a big influence when it comes to purchasing, I think the brands actually have some control over what that trust looks like, because they can literally have someone review their product and use it as advertising in a video format. So that trust can already be there before the users even purchased, which I think is something that's really interesting, that we haven't really had before until the past couple of years with the rise of influencer marketing and UGC. I don't know if you agree with that, Andy.
Yeah, absolutely, particularly influencer. I just want to pick up on the brand side of it first. So bear in mind, and you did a blog on our website earlier this week all about this transition now from browsers like Chrome was one of the last ones to allow functioning third-party cookies. So as of the 4th of Jan, as you said in your blog, Chrome has now started as the last browser to phase that out. So if websites run on third-party cookies, or they use some kind of connection to that in terms of tracking, then that's going to start to stop working. And so brands have got a few choices. And again, you highlighted this in your article, one of which is to move to a server-side tracking, which allows you to collect first-party data. So that allows you to get a bit more information about what your audience is doing, where they come from, and all that sort of stuff. But I think what it's started to do, and there's a lot of things that happen in cycles, it's very cyclical marketing. What's starting to happen now is we've gone to the era of what I call the era of performance marketing, where everything is measured to the last dollar, last cents, to the where did this person come from, where did they go to, and we've kind of forgotten a bit about brand activation and brand marketing and awareness building, because the metrics in performance marketing don't really allow for that, because it shows a low ROAS, or it shows a poor click-through rate, or it shows poor conversion rate when you look directly at the top funnel ads versus what you get in a carousel ad or a shopping feed in Google. So what is starting to happen, I think, is a trend of brands realizing that you can't just keep selling more to a pot of people that's diminishing. And so it's getting more and more difficult to gain growth through a fixed return on ad spend model. And so one of the things that we champion is, yes, have your fixed ROAS model, but you've got to have a different way of measuring further up the funnel activity that we call build and storytell activity. So I think you'll start to see a trend of brands starting to think a bit more about that across 2024, partly because they've kind of got to a ceiling and they can't do much more with what they're doing within the performance marketing sort of framework. Second of all, they're going to be able to see a lot less data. And so they're going to start moving more towards, okay, so what does the macro look like? And I made a comment, I think, on an article on LinkedIn this morning, where it was kind of saying, I've gone down this sort of fifth iteration of an attribution model, and I can't work out what. And I'm seeing all the time brands go down this rabbit hole, and they've forgotten that there's a macro view of their business and what their market activity is actually doing and generating. And so I think there's going to be a sliding up the scale in terms of spend. There's going to be much more budget moving towards the awareness side of it, partly because of the tracking issue, the cookie issue, partly because people have just got to this threshold and they can't seem to get past it. We've done lots of webinars on this before, so definitely look back in the luxury club section on our website, where we've got all of these previous webinars stored, because there's some good information there. The other thing on trust is an interesting one. We're operating, and luxury brands particularly, are operating in an increasingly busy space. and brands are doing an increasingly poor job at targeting, and so there's lots of noise in the space. So really, brands need to think about how their story is different and why, what is that personality, and deliver that personality, and then that will instantly develop some elements of trust, because the customers will feel like they know who you are and what you're all about. So that's the first stage of building trust. The second thing is think about it under the phrase KLT, know, like, trust. So in order to build trust, people have got to know you, they've then got to like you, and then they'll trust you. So one of the really good ways that you've mentioned, Danielle, about this already is getting other people to decide on what they think of you and to share that opinion. And influencers is a really good way to do that, particularly getting them to create user generated content to do that. That I think is going to be really, well, it is already a massive industry and it will continue to be a big industry. So there's a few things there I think to focus on.
Nice. So then moving on to targeting and personalization, and this, I guess, would fall into two kind of categories within each one. Obviously, targeting options are different depending on what platform you're serving your ads in, but it will also be different depending on where those videos fall within your marketing funnel, which Andy's touched upon a little already. But I do think that targeting has become both more difficult but also easier, as oxymoronic as that sounds. So, you know, targeting used to be that you could basically pinpoint an exact person depending on their age and their interests, and, you know, what they'd previously been browsing and whether they'd, you know, dropped onto one of your competitors' sites. And you could basically trace their entire digital footprint, and then you could say, I want exactly that person to see my ad. That's not the case anymore, and that's posed some difficulties for marketers who have been used to working in that way. But it's also made things a lot simpler in terms of brand building and those upper funnel ads, because either the algorithms that are driving these campaign types will find the best people who are in the market for your products and it will serve it to them automatically, or it means taking a bit of a step back, and marketers, as Andy said, actually taking a macro view and thinking, okay, so we've been doing all of this hyper targeting for these exact people. Well, there's only a finite amount of those people in the world. So we need to step back now and we need to take a broader look. And if we want to build our brand, we need more eyeballs from more demographics in more countries seeing our brand and seeing our product. And it actually means that marketers have had to really kind of broaden their opinions on what it means, what targeting means. And I think that's an interesting thing, maybe for brands to go back to the drawing board and to have a look at and think, what's the best way that we're going to be able to target new customers and acquire new customers at scale? Is it going to be the algorithm and letting the algorithm choose? Or is it going to be a free-for-all where we kind of just set it to very broad parameters that we're able to with kind of the data that we already have? And then I think it's also, you know, where are those people browsing? You know, what platforms are they using? You know, can we introduce something new? What are the different targeting levels depending on what channel we're on? So interestingly enough, Sky AdSmart, which is a digital TV channel, actually has some of the most sophisticated targeting. And when people think of TV, they're like, we can't control who sees the ads because it's just going to go to everyone. That's not the case. It's actually probably one of the most kind of comprehensive targeting option that you actually have now when you look at video channels as a whole. Obviously, YouTube being controlled by Google has the same targeting options. So I think there's loads to think about as a marketer. And also, then go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say also, it's not that Sky AdSmart to be on national television in front of your target audience is not particularly expensive either, is it?
No, it has a lower entry point than you would think. But I think that's not to get off topic. That's generally the gist around TV, people think it's really expensive. Even general TV advertising has a lower entry point than you might think. But for the sake of today, yes, Sky AdSmart is a really great option, and yeah, the targeting's mental. So something for brands to have a look at. I think if you're looking to invest in upper funnel and you've exhausted some of your other options, I think that could be really good.
Yeah, and also operate with the sort of mantra of it's good to be famous to a few than infamous to many. So, and what I mean by that is when you're going after a new audience, whether an existing brand or not, or whether you want to expand to people that don't know you, it's better to look at a small subsegment of that audience and become very, very known to those people. Because what tends to happen is that has a knock-on effect. So that sort of particular audience, when they know your brand, know the fabric, and know the product, and they start buying and testing and using, that has a sort of a supplementary impact. I think sometimes brands want to go after a new audience, and they've sometimes got quite a lot of budget to go and do it, and they spend lots in the upper funnel and then try and work out what's worked and what hasn't worked and all the rest of it. Or actually, if they just went a bit slower with it, and when we're a bit more specific with what they say and to who, and then grow from the sort of center out. So it's better. My advice is better to be famous to a few than infamous to many. And just going back onto your point about the sort of targeting, the concept to sell into the people that hold the purse strings, the CEOs, the proprietors of luxury brands, is that you can't scale by, I've mentioned this already, and I've mentioned it lots of times in these webinars, you can't scale by selling more to the same people. So lifetime value of customers is fixed in most cases. So for example, if you're a footwear brand, you can't just ask people to buy some new shoes every month, irrespective of whether you're operating a very, very lucrative market where your target audience is wealthy and they've got lots of cash to spend. There's only so many pairs of shoes that the most shoe fanatic amongst us will want to buy or can buy or can even wear. They've only got 2 feet, so they only wear one pair of shoes at one time. So yeah, you have to adopt this concept of, in order to scale and scale quickly across 2024, you've got to go and find new audiences, or at least expand upon the people you're talking to at the moment, find more like that. And there's lots of tools and lots of simple ways and lots of cost-efficient ways to do that without having to go, straight to ITV and say, "Can I have the slot on the new Who Wants to Be a Millionaire series?" It doesn't need to be as all or nothing. There's definitely lots of fertile ground in the middle, really. And personalization is an interesting one because there's lots of websites that offer personalization. There's lots of bolt-ons to the likes of Shopify Plus that add personalization into the shopping experience. And that's worth looking at. And I think it was big in 2023. And it's going to be even bigger in 2024. But the best way to personalize is to personalize before they actually arrive at the site. And to do that is by really understanding who you're outreaching to as part of your new audience acquisition, and create something video, preferably audio, absolutely as well, or just some visual assets that resonate directly with them. And, spend more time on understanding who they are and what they might like, and even more money, and less on the creating of the asset, because it doesn't need to be cinematic quality. It doesn't need to be feature length, broadcast on live television or anything. It can be something that's fairly subtle, but if it resonates strongly with your target audience, it feels personal, and that's a really good way to build knowledge, likability, and trust, which is what we're all trying to achieve, really.
Yeah, I agree. I think generally when marketers think of personalization, they think of, like addressing someone by their first name in an email campaign and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But from a video perspective, and I think in particular for luxury e-commerce and video within that industry, personalization is much more than that. It's about the user being able to see themselves in the brand, and that could be, making sure that your models are diverse and inclusive, or represent something that the audience is going to be able to see themselves in. It could be down to like location or where you choose to shoot, because if people recognize things or recognize places that they've been, it feels more personal. There's loads of things that you can do within the actual video itself that can make it more personal. And if you wanted to take it a step further, you know, if you're looking to branch out internationally and you've got one campaign set up for the UK and you've got one campaign set up for France and then another one set up for the States and then another one set up for Australia, obviously you can't like fly people around the world. You could if you had the budget to, but think about the nuances of those different audiences. So, you know, if you did have the availability to do so, film in London if you're going after UK people, film in Paris if you're looking to go after a French audience, or take a look at the styling in those different areas. So somebody in France might dress quite different, you know, your audience in France might dress quite differently or style a product differently depending on where they are in the world. So really having a look at how you can fit in to that particular demographic as much as possible. If you're looking to, you know, branch into a younger audience, but all of your models are slightly older, is it going to resonate as much? Maybe not. So there's loads that you can do within the creative briefing process and the actual creation of the video that can make it feel more personal. And it has nothing to do with, you know, like getting people to sign up and naming people and sending stuff on their birthday, which I think has, you know, does have a really important part to play. But as Andy mentioned, that personalisation needs to start way before.
And it's like being honest as well, isn't it? If you're a brand that says you're an inclusive brand, and then you look at the website and every model is a size 6, then that's not going to be, you know, that's not a personalised and honest approach. So as you just said, then Danielle, the customer's going to go through to the website and go, hang on a minute, that's not me. And I think the other thing to think about is, and we use this quite a lot, this phrase a lot, is in the luxury space particularly, you need to offer transformation. The customers that you're targeting are wealthy, they have the money to spend. So, you know, so how are you going to get across when you can't really talk about price and obviously don't want to talk about price or discount, and nor should you. So you've got to offer some transformation. You've got to suggest that this product is going to transport you into a different feeling, different location, different mindset. And so certainly from a personalization point of view, you're starting before the website, I think, is the main theme, but also you've got to really be honest with what you're saying, and you've got to offer that transformation.
Yeah, and I think video is the perfect medium to be able to do that, because it's all about emotions. It's all, like everything that we've talked about today all ties back to creating that emotional connection, and video is the best vehicle to be able to do that. And I think having that constantly in the back of your mind is invaluable, really. It's really hard to convey an emotion through a photograph. You can do it, and photographers do that, it's their job. But I think video is just an easier way of being able to craft that.
Yeah, and also, I think part of the understanding of when you're reaching out to new customers is understanding what your personality is as a brand. So not every brand needs to make all of their customers laugh. And not every brand needs to be super serious. And no, we don't, you know, there's no way we'd, you know, use a colloquial word in our branding. This is exactly who we are. I think just understand who you are and what you represent, I think, as a brand, and then stick to that. Just be honest with who you are. And that will come across in what you offer.
So we are running out of time, so we'll try and make these points really quick. But the versatility that you get within video formats is crazy. So many different platforms have so many different requirements in terms of video. You can be really versatile with the style of creative that you've got, depending on what platform you're using. So, you know, we've already talked about UGC. That can be used across multiple different channels. I would say to testing formats and testing channels comes under that kind of versatility. But essentially, if you really wanted to, you could shoot one kind of big hero video in 16:9. Yeah. Making sure that it's croppable into vertical. So, you know, making sure that like when the vocal point can always be kind of cropped into that vertical thing. And you could create a whole suite of assets from one video shoot. And that's what I mean when I talk about versatility of video. being able to kind of kill all of your birds with one stone, and then supplement it with the likes of UGC and any kind of influencer activity that you might be doing, or any organic content that's performed really well. But that all comes down to it being creative enough for you to be able to do that and for it to resonate across all the different platforms. So I will always tell people to be bold and to be brave. If you think an idea is slightly too weird, say it anyway. And kind of you'll reach a middle point between very, very weird and kind of snooze, and you'll find a really happy medium in the middle that everyone's kind of all on board with, and it's out there enough that it's going to capture attention, and it's creative enough that you feel really excited about it. And ultimately, I think video is fun and it is creative, and you can experiment with it quite a lot, and you can experiment in the edit and kind of how your editors are putting things together, and it can be really exciting. So I think it's worth, if you've not done video before, kind of just getting your hands dirty and film stuff with a phone and kind of get creative and see what you might be able to come out with. There's so many tools now that allow people that don't have video editing experience to jump in and actually create something from scratch without any kind of training or experience in editing. And you can have fun with it, and you can see what you can find. So I think that's something that brands can start doing straight away if they really wanted to.
Yeah, a good example is a footwear client of ours. We went to see the factory in Athens in Greece last year, and we filmed some of and they're a handmade footwear brand, and we filmed some of the sort of craftsmen, which is what they are really, that create these beautiful products. And we filmed it on my Galaxy S22. And that was, in terms of the storytelling layer of creative, that was the most successful one in terms of click-through rate through the whole year. One where we just showed our new target audiences a little bit about behind the scenes. This is how they're filmed, and there was no music, no sound. All it was literally just the sound of the workshop in the background, and that captivated people's hearts and minds enough as part of the framework of the storytell to really sort of influence sales really further down the line. But for the purpose of that creative and that storytelling layer, it was way over 10% click-through rate, which is unheard of for that level of ad, which is great. And then lastly, just in terms of creativity, you've touched on most of it. Just be bold. It's better to do something than nothing. And I think the whole analysis paralysis thing is real when brands are either launching or whether they're well established and they're thinking, well, we don't really want to step out of line here. You really can't, unless you cause some offense. Obviously there's certain topics that you avoid so you don't really alienate yourself and cause trouble. But in terms of be playful, great, try that. Be subtle, be bold, do some behind the scenes stuff on an iPhone, and be brave to produce and put that out there to show everyone who you are. Just try lots and lots of things. Videos it can be a really inexpensive thing. One of the ways that we start talking to clients about this is we say, when you have a photo shoot booked, get them to leave the still cameras running. So as the model comes into shot and transitions from one particular pose to the next, a lot of the time cameras capture really, really good quality video. And we instructed the photographer for a number of our brands to do this. And some of the videos that we have live for some of our highest performing clients are videos that weren't part of a video shoot necessarily. It was a still shoot. They left the cameras running, and you know this, Danielle, because you do a lot of the editing for us, and you just chop them up into nice things with lots of nice movement. Often don't zoom in on product. If you're going to try and attract people and tell stories in the upper and middle funnels, zoom out. People want to see faces, body language, interaction with the humans, interaction with the environment. That's really the four things that they want to see. They don't necessarily want to see zoomed up of somebody's ankle wearing a shoe or a glove or an earring zoomed in to, they want to see how that, because ultimately, don't forget, humans connect visually. And so they want to see other humans' eyes, other humans' faces, how they're moving. And so think of it a bit like that. Be versatile with it, be bold with it, and just do something. Something is better than nothing. You're going to get some knowledge from that.
Yeah, and I think when we have some brands, or we've come across some brands that are like, oh, well, you know, we can't shoot on location. We have a studio, and that's all that we can do. And you know, we just do product and e-commerce photography. You can still have fun with it. You know, think about colors, think about what your lighting setup looks like. You know, if you're gonna, you know, get a marketing member of your marketing team, or even not, there with an iPhone on like a really cheap kind of gimbal that's going to reduce shake, and then, you know, shoot some mad angles, and, you know, get some crazy footage, or, you know, just, you say, be really fun with it, and then in the edit see what you can piece together. And you might find that actually you can get some really dynamic videos at kind of no extra cost, really, because you were putting that shoot on anyway. And yeah, I will always tell people just to get their hands dirty, and just to jump in and try it. And I think you'll be really surprised actually at the quality that you can come out with at the end of it. And probably one way that you could get buy-in from senior members of your team, if you think like, I did this for free, it's worked really well, this is a click-through rate, we've done some testing, you know, we would now like a budget to be able to produce some more video, because you've already been able to prove that it's worth it. So
yeah, absolutely.
We've already touched upon this a little bit, Andy. I know that you've spoken a little bit about how to measure. If people are okay sticking around for maybe another 3 or 4 minutes, we will quickly whistle through this. It's the last talking point for us today. I'm going to hand straight over to Andy, just because data's not really my bag. But I know for a fact that, you know, if you're running upper funnel ads, they're not going to be generating a huge amount of, I mean, they might, but it's, you know, the likelihood is they're not going to be generating a huge amount of ROAS. But the effect that's going to have on your business growth as a whole is kind of immeasurable. You can't put a value on how important video is in introducing new people to your brand. They might not buy straight away, and that's something that, you know, marketers will just have to deal with. They might buy in 3 months' time, 6 months' time. They might not even be in the market for another year for potentially a seasonal product. But having that brand marketing means that when they are in the market, you're going to be at the top of mind. So removing video or removing any of those introductory channels can actually be to a detriment of your overall business growth. So I'll pass over to Andy now for the more nitty-gritty stuff.
Yeah, well, very simply, you're right, really. If you're looking at a direct return on your marketing spend from an upper funnel piece of creative, you're not going to get it. It doesn't matter how well you shoot, how well you position it in front of your audience. You know, new audiences will not see one piece of your creative and convert. Correction, they will, but it'll be tiny percentage. So, you know, expect a 1 to 2 times ROAS at best if you look at it on a last click basis. So we actually don't put a ROAS target on upper funnel creative. In terms of storytelling, which is the middle creative, we do start to look at ROAS. It does start to creep up. You might get sort of 1.5 to 2.5 times ROAS in that space. But what you will see in other metrics is click-through rates start to improve. You'll start to see engagement. So they'll start to see multiple ads. And if it's a video, they'll see the full video, not just the first 2 seconds or 1 second of it. So you see engagement start to build up. So that middle layer is all about, are we seeing ongoing engagement with that sort of element? And then the bottom funnel, which we call sell. So the sell stage is all about offering the product, ideally not as a discount, particularly if you're targeting new audiences. You don't want to recruit people under a discount, under the promise of 15-20% off. And if you do the job properly, you shouldn't need to at that stage. But then you start to look at ROAS. Now, for clients that this is new to, what we actually do is we do a mini sort of funnel test using one campaign or a collection of campaigns that are sequenced together within a platform. So Meta is a great example, where you can put all of your upper, middle, and lower funnel creative in one campaign. Let the algorithm deliver to a new audience only. So you can say, don't show to anyone that already knows us, been on our website in the last 90, 180 days, has bought from us before, here's all our product list, don't go after them. So that you know that these campaigns are actively going after new people. And then you measure the ROAS from the overall 3 stages. So you would say, okay, so we spent £1,000 and we've got £5,000 back from the total funnel. So our overall ROAS is 5 times. And that's a really good way to start selling in to the powers that be, or testing for yourselves the impact of what you're doing in the upper funnel. Keep it all within one campaign and you have one ROAS to cover everything.
And
so
so
yeah,
just to chime in here, and because I know we had this conversation with David, so even though all of those different stage ads are in the same campaign, you can still guess isn't the right word, because there is some kind of data behind it, but the Advantage Plus algorithm will serve the ads to the people which they think is going to perform kind of the best. So it will make a judgment call based on the quality of your ad or the engagement of your audience, and it will put more money behind those ads that it knows is going to perform well. So you are able to see the breakdown of the budget split with all your different types of creative. So if you think, an objection that we sometimes come across is, well, surely Facebook is just going to spend all my money on that catalog ad or that carousel ad that's got product images in it. How do we know that the upper funnel ads are working or that they're doing their job? Well, basically, if the algorithm is spending money on those ads over, a product image, we know that they're working because the algorithm has made the decision to serve that ad knowing that it's going to be effective. So you can kind of see that budget split, and you can see where the algorithm is spending that budget within the campaign, and you can kind of make a semi, insightful decision on whether or not your creative is engaging enough. And that's in the absence of a kind of an attribution tool that would be able to do that a bit more accurately. If you don't have that in place, there are things within Meta that you can use in order to make a judgment call on whether that's working.
Yeah, and also you don't need big spend to do this testing. Just put £1,000 aside. You need minimum 1,000 to give enough quantity to the campaign to give it the legs that it needs. But don't think that if you want to test your videos in some kind of structure, certainly as some kind of full funnel structure, that you need 10 grand a month or 20 grand a month or 50 grand or anything else. Even if you're a new brand or an existing brand, just spend £1,000. Just set up a meta campaign as we just described. You'll be pretty surprised with what you get, particularly if you bear in mind that you're just targeting new customers with this, not a blend or a balance of, because sometimes, like with Google Ads, for example, in Performance Max, you can say show mostly to existing customers, but also to new. What you can say in Meta is ignore everybody else that knows us and just focus on you. That'll give you good insight.
Fabulous. Well, we're over time, so apologies for keeping you longer than we anticipated, but hopefully that's given you some really good insight into why we champion video so much, why we think it's really important for people to start thinking more seriously about video, and the different ways that you can use it. As always, if you have any questions, we're reachable. We're both reachable on LinkedIn, so find either one of us or drop us an email at info@revenuegrowth.agency. And we will be back next month for another webinar, and we hope to see you all there soon.
Bye, everyone.